strategy like Freeze Mage.
Yep, and we are going to get into Game 1, Austria versus New Zealand, Game King versus Flame Lord, Paladin versus Druid. Looks like it's going to be the Jade Druid from Flame Lord, which has been very popular in the Southeast Asian regions, actually.
Yes.
As well. We've seen it in recent China tournaments as well, which has been a bit of a surprise for me. I genuinely think Aggro Druid's just overall stronger, but it depends what you're aiming at, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. And of course, again, with this tournament format, it's not just a matter of bring the best decks, it's what's the best partner deck for the deck that you want to put it with. All of these kind of considerations come in, as well as to what you're targeting, what you're expecting from your opponent. But looks like Jade Druid from Flame Lord. Game King, on the other hand, is going with Paladin, and we mentioned how many different Paladin decks there are to choose from. There's aggressive Murlocs, there's mid-range Murlocs, there's control, there's N'Zoth, there's hand buffs, there's elementals.
There's
all
elemental
of the,
hand buff.
Right. All of these options we've seen being played, and Game King looks like he's going for the mid-range Murloc version based on a few of the cards that we did see. But even within that archetype, there's a few interesting choices, because Doomsayers aren't always seen in that. Neither are Equalities 100% of the time. Sometimes there's only as little as 1 or 0 consecrations in the list either. So Austria choosing to go a little more control heavy with this Murloc mid-range shell.
Yeah, what's interesting is, in general, the benefit of playing the Murloc opening in the Paladin is that you grab hold of the board.
Yes.
So then you wonder why Doomsayer. But I guess, you know, the plan is to have that defensive option if he rocks into Pirate Warrior, for example, and you're just like, okay, I'll Doomsayer on 2, then everything I do is stronger than the Pirate Warrior after that to build a board. And just in case you guys didn't know at home that these players can actually have full communication with the team during each game. Their team will be spectating, they'll be able to talk to them. Looks like Flame Lord, you can see him talking to nobody at the moment, but he's actually on comms with his team, whereas Game King looking off to the side of the camera as he's, you know, you can see his teammates behind him as well. So although it looks like there's a couple of players in one camera and one in the other, it is a completely fair fight, guys.
Doomsayer on 2 here, no development from Flame Lord. There was never likely to be against Druid, now that we've learned it is going to be the Jade and not that aggressive Druid that reaches for the board early. But with Game King having that Doomsayer in hand, he almost would have liked it to be aggressive Druid at this point, just so he could shut down that early game play so effectively. But he knows he's got time here. He has a significant amount of answers now that we've seen there's an Equality in his deck in the Mulligan to be able to hold back Jade Druid for a while. And crucially for him, New Zealand and Flame Lord have not got off to a flying start here.
Yeah, not that fast at all. And we see it, you know, some interesting choices now for the Jade Druid. We see Primordial Drake in there. We see the Burglary Bully as well, which is pretty much the standard go-to replacement for Azure Drake now that is not in the format. But we'll see how it pans out. Double Gadget Design, again, another benefit of having Burglary Bully in your deck. But definitely not too fast at all. I mean, Jade Idol into hero power here clears up the 1-1, but just feels so slow, and no turn 4 plays for Flame Lord at the moment.
Just nothing going on. That Primordial Drake is a little bit interesting. It is just an objectively very, very powerful card, can provide you with that extra bit of aggro insurance later in the game. Aggressive decks are one of the banes of Jade Druid's existence, so no great surprise to be seeing it, but right now the brutal thing for Flame Lord is just how slow this start is, and it's giving Game King all the time in the world to just set up hero power pass into a 1-4, and he is significantly ahead on the board in the process.
Yeah, these options now. Curator feels pretty decent, as there's already a Curator in the deck, so having a spare one seems okay. Game King actually has a lot of early stuff anyway, so it doesn't need to grasp for like a Squirming Tentacle, for example, just to play something onto the board next turn. He's looking okay and gone for the second Curator. I wonder how many Dragons and Murlocs are left. There's probably one more Hydrologist as well, and then maybe a second Drake.
Well, we saw Nessie, we saw the Adapt Murlocs guy, so there's almost certainly a decent pile of Murlocs in this deck. It is a matter of
course,
that's also, of course, the beast that you draw from the Curator itself. So he's likely to be able to get good value out of both of those Curators. That's why he chooses to pick it up. But even though he got himself, you know, a very powerful card in the Curator there off Stonehill Defender, that's actually just a low roll for Paladin. Like, some of the cards that you can pick up off Stonehill are just absolutely nuts. It's a 3-mana 1/4, discover a Paladin legendary, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah, with Tarim and Tyrion, of course, as taunt minions.
Wicker Flame as well, if you need it
Wicker
against
Flame, of
aggro,
course,
can be
yeah.
absolutely huge.
Hey, Wicker Flame, just in general, card's just good.
It's a good card,
especially when you combine it with Spike Rig Steed.
Yes.
Which means that it just becomes quite ludicrous, actually. It heals for like 4 every time it takes damage. You know, or every time it deals damage, should I say. And then has just a ton of health as well. So we'll see how that pans out for him, though. And Flame Lord, Jade Behemoth, not what he is after. And this is a pretty horrible turn with Jade idling to hero power. Means that even next turn, Burglary Bully is still quite slow.
37 mana's worth of cards in hand on turn 5, not ideal for the Druid. I think it's important to point out here that Austria now know the archetype they're up against. They would have seen this very, very slow start and perhaps even been suspicious of the fact that it was the Frozen style heavy ramp Druid, but now they've seen that Jade card come out. They know exactly what's up in this situation. And speaking of another surprisingly good card, we talked about Stonehill Defender last turn, but Hydrologist itself has really surprised me as just to how core it is to these mid-range and control Paladin decks.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And I've been playing a load of Paladin recently, and I love the Getaway Kodo pick because at the face of it, if the Stonehill Defender dies, it returns to hand to guess what? Probably discover a Paladin Legendary.
Yes.
Which is going to be pretty awesome. Even if the Hydrologist gets killed first. Okay, another Hydrologist into another Getaway Kodo. Go. You can actually just like almost repeat cycle that card almost infinitely as well. So it's kind of crazy how powerful just a simple looking 2/2 Murloc Discover Secret is.
Yeah, Hydrologist is a prime example of introducing a card into Hearthstone that buffs other cards without actually buffing them, right? This is an argument that we hear a lot in Hearthstone. Like, these cards are just really, really weak. Why don't you buff them so they see play? Hydrologist now suddenly sees Eye for an Eye being used as a freeze mage counter, as an ice block in mage general counter. And then Getaway Kodo, a card that we just haven't seen. Hydrologist opens that up as a value engine for these mid-range Paladin decks. So I really do like Hydrologist. It's one of my surprise favorite cards of this set. Wasn't something I was expecting to get along with as well as I do.
Yeah, and even the low amount of secrets in the set at the moment for Paladin means that the choices are so consistent. Even Noble Sacrifice for Pirate Warriors or any aggressive decks can really mess them up as well. So Burglary Bully is going to come down now for Flame Lord. Nothing else he can realistically do, but he's going to cash in these coins in the next couple of turns, if he even gets any. But only 3 power on the board at the moment, so more than likely get something out of it, especially when there's a coin and Spike Ridge Steed available for Game King. But there's actually a chance with this board that he just drops the Doomsayer behind this, because there's no good... His opponent's just said, I can't really do anything this turn. He played the Bully, can't even get through the Stonehill Defender. And with the Getaway Kodo, it means that if the top minions the Stonehill Defenders trade into, first he gets that back, then the Doomsayer has to be dealt with.
Yeah, I agree that was a very, very good plan, but then Austria drew the True Silver, and suddenly plans changed, because no need to take any risks. You can eliminate that Bully without giving away any coins. Game King and Austria, of course, don't know how important those coins would be because of the double Auctioneer that's in hand. They do know that Flame Lord in New Zealand haven't ramped yet. They've been stuck with a slow hand, not been able to develop on the board. So they know there's no ramp and there's big threats in hand. So even without knowing specifically that the cards are Auctioneer, they know it's important not to give coins to allow Flame Lord to start rushing out some of these big cards.
Yeah, kind of an obvious reason why your opponent's done nothing for 5 turns, effectively. So we'll see how that pans out. Another card that has kind of been sort of side buffed by others is Valfin Inquisitor. If it's in the deck as well. Because of this Mega Saw, then suddenly your hero power becoming Murlocs, and then adapting them all, which are just tokens, is actually very, very strong, and can make this deck sometimes win in an aggro way. More than anything, you know, you can fill the board early with Murlocs if you Valfin on 1, and then just Mega Saw on 4, and suddenly you've got +3 attack on all your Murlocs. Gets kind of crazy with the addition of, say, a War Leader or something.
Yeah, I would expect any Megasaur deck to be including Valfin Inquisitor for that exact reason. It's just almost guaranteed value from your Megasaur at some point in the game, whereas, you know, other Murlocs can be cleared away before you get a chance to adapt them. The hero power is just always there that you can at least get 1 or 2 procs out of at some point in the game. I say that, though, but Game King's list here is a little bit strange with the Doomsayers and the equalities going on as well. So It could be that because the Doomsayers are in there, he doesn't want any of those early game cards to really get himself on the board and then just make his Doomsayer a weak card. So we will just wait and see, of course. One of the unique twists of this tournament, I think we've got very used to revealed deck lists in the past of us knowing what the players are playing, and more importantly, the opposition knowing what the players are playing, knowing 30 cards for 30 cards, what they have to play around, which tech cards am I scared of, how much damage can they possibly do from hand. That is all a mystery in this tournament to the players, to you guys at home, and to us as well.
Yeah, it definitely adds a fun element of we get to discover this with you guys.
Yes.
As we look at what these players have brought, especially because when you start crossing over regions as well, there are, certain regions do prefer certain cards and certain builds and certain archetypes. So it's really cool to see how they interact across the world at this point. It's the Ancient of War gets dropped down to for Flame Lord and Team New Zealand here, pretty much just dropping down what he can when he can at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's entering now the period of the game where he can really start to go toe-to-toe with this Paladin. Paladin, mid-range and control Paladins, a ton of value in whatever form is in the deck. We see some of them playing Vine Cleaver, which is an enormous value engine, especially when paired with a Sunkeeper Tarim to make them all 3/3s afterwards. Stonehill Defender in itself is just a phenomenal value card, just in terms of generating huge threats, which you can then pull back to your hand with the Getaway Kodos, exactly as we've been talking about. So it is one of the kings of value, is mid-range or control Paladin in the new format, but trying to go value for value, card for card, stat for stat with Jade Druid, that doesn't work out for too many decks too often.
Yeah, and even if there's some early aggression trying to pressure the life, we've seen a lot of the Druid decks playing Scales, which on a high attack Jade, suddenly they just gain like 12, 13 armor instantly, and that's kind of ridiculous. We saw a game last week where there was like, I think 24 armor gains in one turn for the Druid. It's like, oh, now you have to kind of kill them twice. So it can get very difficult with even these bigger defensive options, which means the Druid can go even later into the game.
The Doomsayer here is just a response to not really being able to have a clean answer to this 5/10. He can neutralize it, but it's still just an annoying 1/10 taunt that he can't really push through. And Doomsayer hidden behind Spike Ridge Steed is one of the most frustrating things in the game. Yes, the player playing it behind the Spike Ridge Steed actually loses a little bit of value themselves because they have got this huge unit in play with the buff on it, but it makes such an intense wall to try and push through if you want to try and get to that Doomsayer.
Especially because that secret is still down, which, it could be Redemption. I think, has he checked for, he knows it's not Noble Sacrifice,
correct,
right?
Yeah.
But it could be Redemption, could be Getaway Kodo. So imagine you trade into the Stonehill, it goes back to your opponent's hand, like we're about to see now, and then you've got to get through the Steed, kill the Doomsayer, and if you don't, then Game King and Team Austria are feeling pretty good about life now. They've just returned a super high value card to their hand, and Doomsayer is going to clear the board for them.
I just caught the reaction on Flamelord's face. He traded into the first half. Of course, now that at least means that the Stegodon will die to the Doomsayer, but then immediately threw his hands up. How am I supposed to deal with this situation? This is just unfair. And he is just going to have to pass away the turn. Free turn of tempo back to Austria here, but they don't have one of the big ever-present 8-drops, one of the universally strong 8-drops to play down. They do have a Primordial Drake, but Rag Lightlord or Tyrion, of course, would have been greatly preferred in this situation.
Yeah,
there is the Inquisitor, though.
Yeah, it would have. If you're going to drop Murlocs from a list, I would never drop Inquisitor.
No, I completely
agree. Yeah. Having your hero power generate something that can be mass adapted is like insane. Actually insane. So no true surprise, but probably dropping a few of the other Murlocs to make some room. We're going to see Curator number 1 come down. I believe that was the original Curator, right?
It was the one on the, it was the left-hand side one of the two, so I believe it would have been, yeah.
So not giving Flamelord any ideas as to what the first taunt minion was that you got from Stonehill. Now we see a War Leader and Stampeding Kodo, which is becoming more and more common in recent lists.
Yeah, seeing the Kodo now, I wonder if this is the list that Kalento has climbed all the way to the top of ladder with. I will confess, I'm not like 30 card familiar with that list that Kalento has been playing, but I know Stampeding Kodo was one of the big inclusions that he really brought into the list that not everyone else was playing.
That's what I liked about his tweet, actually. He tweeted out like, oh, climb really well, there's this, gonna keep it to myself for now. In the screenshot, there's a Kodo, and you're like, well, You're giving away some information already, Colento.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely fun. But Kodo, I've been playing the list I've been playing recently, does actually get a lot of work done. You know, there's a lot of decks that have those small minions just to gain that tempo gain from that. But we see Flamelord now actually starting to drop some Jades onto the board, but that's all of his Jade in hand now. And it's maxed out at 4 so far.
It is, but he has a huge refill coming up very soon with Gadgetzan Auctioneer. 10 mana Auctioneers in hand, Innovate in hand as well, means that he can potentially go off on a huge miracle turn in the future. But I think, just going back to Kodo quickly, I think one of the best applications for it is just the tempo push against Taunt Warrior. Yeah. When you just snipe a Bloodhoof Brave or an Ali Armorsmith with it and just keep on pushing, that is very, very often game winning. Obviously, not quite as fantastic in this matchup right now since it's been drawn past the point where the Jades can be beaten with it. So Game King is just going to go for the massive board here, and I imagine he's going to be looking for Poisonous or looking for Stats, and he gets a good choice of both of them.
Yeah, and just in case you don't know, the Megasaur actually adapts all of the Murlocs in the same fashion. It does not adapt them separately, so he's gone for plus attack on all of them outside of Poison. To be fair, the plus attack is kind of the same as Poison at this point because the minions aren't big enough to not die to them now because they're all at 6 attack. Also, as well, the benefit is that you can just hit them in the face for 6 each as opposed to Poison, which does not actually increase any attacks.
Can't Poison face. Unlucky.
Oof, imagine that. It's a Poison face game. Adapt will be so overpowered.
Jade Spirit now picked up, but is it Auctioneer turn? Primordial Drake in hand, though, is looking pretty appealing as well. Doesn't answer the War Leader, but does take the other Murlocs off the board, removing the War Leader's buff essentially from the board temporarily.
Well, what do you think of actually swipe onto the Curator and then innovate Primordial Drake?
That's actually... that would allow you to take care of the War Leader as well, right?
Because you clear the board, right?
Your 3/3 would stay alive through the effect and be able to attack through, yeah.
Yeah, that looks, you know, obviously you want it with 2 Gadgetzans in hand all game. Very tempting to just try and go crazy with the Gadgetzan. As you said, you'll effectively have 6 mana with 1 card draw from the Innovate to go. But there's no other spells in hand. You could easily just draw another minion. Although there probably aren't too many minions left. But this just clears the danger board here. So let's see what he does. Gonna attack Primordial Drake, Innovate, Swipe. Yeah, it doesn't quite It doesn't quite matter how you line it up as long as you hit everything on board, and you do. And this is a very, very nice turn here for Flamelord and Team New Zealand.
It is. That is a complete swing. 4-8 in play now. But now Outdoor Peacekeeper Kodo is able to take care of this. The Outdoor has been picked up alongside the Kodo, although he already had the first one in hand, which is essentially just a hard assassinate effect for any minion while gaining a lot of tempo by generating stats. You know, a situational Vile Spine Slayer, let's call it. But still, a good solution to this situation right now. He can still choose to go for it, even though he's led with Stonehill Defender here, because he has the coin available to still get back up to 8 mana.
Yeah, and the option's still not... We've talked about the Legendary popping up all the time. I should roll these Stonehills for him. I'm pretty good at it, but yeah, still not getting a Paladin Legendary as an option, but picked up another Primordial Drake. Very strong minion, but as you said, with the coin, this is a nice sort of flipping the board round yet again. Very, very back and forth, this game.
It is. And this is, I think, just a trademark of the new meta, really. There's a couple of decks. Obviously, Pirate Warrior is still around that can snowball you, and Quest Rogue can just blow you out of the game if they draw a couple of Shadow Steps. But apart from that, the meta is filled with these kind of mid-rangey back-and-forth battles where players are fighting for board control, which is refreshing to see after the kind of snowbally metagames that we've had. But of course, there is still plenty of time left for the smart minds of Hearthstone to find the most effective snowball decks in the game.
Yeah, I have no doubt it'll happen at some point, so let's enjoy it while it lasts. But I do agree, it feels like every class has a way to battle for the board in some way, and it's fairly even. Forbidden Healing being drawn for Austria here. Good card in general, even if just used on some of your bigger taunt minions. It can be nice just to create, an even bigger wall. Tarim, for example, is quite nice. That you can Tarim trade and then just buff it up again. It's got so much health. It's normally pretty strong. And is that Curator number 3?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
You can see from Flamelord's reaction that he is not pleased with the amount of value that's being generated here. Second Gentle Megasaur has been picked up alongside second Vilefin Inquisitor, which is actually not a dead card in this kind of situation because it will refresh your hero power. So you can go hero power, Inquisitor, hero power again, then you have a big old pile of Murlocs on the board that you can adapt with your Megasaur.
Yeah, and also, it's a Murloc itself. Even if you couldn't do that, you know, having that, there's still probably another War Leader in the deck. We can see the Megasaur in hand. It's just another Murloc that's got a good chunk of health. So, yeah, definitely not dead. It's very nice to have a 1-drop that can do something late game. So, still looking at pretty good for Game King. And Flamelord's probably still just discussing with his team the fact that not only did Game King break the legendary rules of only having one legendary of a copy of one in the deck, he now has 3. So he's just broke the average Hearthstone rules in general.
That's only the second one, I think, right?
No, he discovered one again. Right?
Didn't he take Primordial Drake from the third one?
Yeah, sorry, I take it back. He took the Drake. He still has another Stonehill, though. So he could get a third kill. There's still a chance.
I think at this point he might just be running out of curator value in his deck just a little bit now, having drawn both Megasaurs, for example. And the Kodo. It's kind of rare that you'll see too many more beasts put in there.
Stranglethorn Tiger. You're
yeah,
like, what?
Why not? Let's go.
Because the Earthen Scales coming into effect now. It's +1/+1 on a minion, and then whatever its attack is, you gain in armor. So we see a 1 mana, gain 7 armor, +1/+1. Not too bad. You can see why it's used in Jade decks, as those Jades normally get up quite high.
Yeah, and it's also, not always so much about the health gain or the armor gain that you get off the big Jades. It's also just a great card to have in an Auctioneer deck, just as a 1-mana spell that you can always cycle out because, even if you just drop Auctioneer and cast it on Auctioneer, that's a fantastic start to your turn. So no great surprise to have seen it here, but now double Wild Growth, those cards that were missed so sorely early on by New Zealand, have come into the hand in the late game, and there's the other benefit of Auctioneer is that it turns these dead cards into extremely powerful effects because of the way that Auctioneer functions with the dual spell that happens when you cast Wild Growth at 10 mana.
Yeah, actually kind of crazy to just 1 card draw 2, and it was a card that's you're going to be bust anyway. Looking at Game King's hand though, playing Wild Pyro, Equalities, Consecrates, and Doomsayers.
Yeah.
He does not want to die in the early game. But he's ahead on board at the moment, so he needs to work out exactly how he wants to do this. He's going to go for Pyro Consecrate going?
Pyro Consecrate, hit the 7/7, trade in the 1 damage into the Auctioneer as a full clear, and he continues to push, and I believe this is also at least representing the threat of a lethal setup as well. So I really like this play from Game King.
Yeah. Clears off the Auctioneer, which is the big threat on Flamelord's side of the board. And as you said, it's a lot of minions that aren't that easy to deal with. Everything but the Wild Pyro is on 1, so even dealing 2 damage is quite the ass now that Azure Drake isn't in the format. It's much harder for Druid to even get spell damage off.
Have you met our Lord and Savior Blood Mage Swipe, Raven?
Yes.
Look at that, 5-2-2-2 just lined up across the left-hand side of the board.
Yeah,
if that isn't a giant sign saying spell power swipe me, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of missed the Blood Mage in the corner there. He's sneaking away, but this is gonna be a huge swipe, and again, another board swing here. Although, it doesn't look like Flamelord's gonna be able to develop too much. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Fandral.
Just tempo Fandral, yeah.
Just get something on the board. The old 1/1 Jade looks weird because the image is the bigger version of the Jade, yet it's a 1/1, so it's kind of funny.
Also, I don't think we've seen any Wraths be used yet, so if he starts to cycle with Auctioneer next turn, there is a good chance that he just hits Wrath off some of these draws from the Wild Growths, which means that having Fandral in play is going to be even more value off his Auctioneer turn. So I really like this. If it's just a tempo push, then it's just a tempo push, having a 3/5 in play, but it also has a ton of upside based on Flamelord's next few draws.
Yeah, and Game King now has Equality and Drake. Another benefit of Drake is it's 8 mana, so in Paladin you can combo it with Equality on 10 and clear off the whole board. And this doesn't look like the scariest board in the world, but you need to be ahead versus Jade Druid.
Yes.
If the next few cards are Jade developments and you didn't clear this board, you just lose at this point. So I feel like Austria and Game King need to really just clear this off, get a 4/8 down, because that's going to be really awkward to deal with for New Zealand, and then go on top of that in the following turns.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that Fandral's there that makes this need to happen, because you know, you say if you fall behind too far, there's a bunch more Jades. I mean, you do always have that equality Drake combo, right? So,
Sure.
you know, saying if they keep developing, you can always just choose to take a little bit more damage, potentially get some more value out of it. The problem with a play like that is that a smart player is always going to get the read on that, right? They're going to say, okay, he's trying to bait me into more equality value, and then the decision is always in the hands of the aggressor. They can say, here are the amount of cards I will allow you to clear with equality.
So we do see the Wraths coming up now, as you mentioned, none being cast so far. Aya is a great card to draw into now, and this game's so even. Innovate is going to allow for either the Wild Growth play or double Wrath if he really wants. But double Wrath isn't going to clear up the Drake, so probably no point.
Yeah, and this was the threat of the Fandral living, right?
Yeah,
because
it would've
now
been nuts.
double Wrath would have drawn 4 more cards and cleared that Drake on board if the Fandral had survived. But now Flame Lord has a slightly more tricky proposition ahead of him.
Yeah, do you like the Earthen Scales on the gadgets then to force a question of 1 extra damage from Game King?
I think the Wild Growth definitely happens. I think this is definitely the lead.
Sure.
But from here it is, I think Earthen Scales to protect is definitely useful. Jade Idol, the perfect pickup to go with it as well.
Can he squeeze
and
it in?
now the infinite Jade train has started. He will take 1 fatigue, but he's going to refill his deck with 3 more cards here. And he didn't. Interesting. He either deliberately chose not to use the Earthen Scales to try and get more armor value out of it later, or he just ran out of time on the rope and didn't get to cast it.
I mean, yeah, that's the difference, right? So he could have tried to make his gadgets unsafe, which is fine because you have the infinite Jades now in the deck, so you're not going to fatigue. Or he could next turn play Jade Spirit, and then that's a huge Jade. You could play Jade Spirit, Jade Idol, then Earthen Scales to gain a ton of armor. So I guess that is his plan, because I'm pretty sure the way he looked then at the end of that turn, he didn't look like he was rushed. He actually looked just pretty reasonable and pretty happy about it, so...
I'm sure from you he will take that as a compliment, Raven.
There you go.
Flame Lord, you look pretty reasonable to Raven.
Not everyone gets that kind of compliment, so...
I don't. I've never heard that.
I told you that when you got your haircut.
That's fair. And how true you are.
There you go. So +3 attack going on the singular Silverhand Murloc there.
Tarim is going to be a big pickup if Game King's going to have any hope as progressing from here. I like this, just loading up the board, just representing the threat of lethal. He knows he needs to end this game now. Austria as a whole, the whole team will recognize that they are behind significantly in terms of late game value now from this position, so they need to make the lethal push. They need to make New Zealand operate more slowly by clearing threats off of Austria's board rather than just dumping all of their mana on developing Jades each turn. So just a tempo Pyromancer just to set up the threat of lethal yet again. But Flame Lord still has 1 or 2 answers up his sleeve here. Ton of armor to gain, Wraths available. But the question is, do you disrespect this and just start going for big Jades anyway and then just jam Earthen Scales on there?
Maybe. Looks like they'll be starting off with a Wrath, but yeah, you know, you mentioned there, like, the Pyro as well. There's what values are you going to get from Pyro in this game now? Like, it's probably a long gone at this point. And again, we see the Jades getting drawn into now. You can just, again, refill the deck with another 3. So this is effectively going infinite with these Jades. Going to stack it up. Looks like he's going to go for the Earthen Scales for the additional 9 health here.
He is just going to give it away, yeah. And you know, the threat of the Pyro, of course, it wasn't a threat with small spells, but it is the activator on the board for equality, which I think would have been the fear. The other thing that Austria were trying to do last turn is just get as many individual bodies in play as possible, because if you have at least parity in terms of number of bodies in play, then Tarim is always just a full clear.
Yep.
You just match up 3/3s versus 3/3s and go from there. So Austria now, I think, from this position, probably just going to try and squeak out little bits of extra value from cards like Tarim, because they know they are super low on resources to deal with this infinite engine from New Zealand. Flame Lord's feeling it. I think he can start to feel this game come together. So I think we might just see kind of a Wicker Flame stalling style turn here, just to try and get a little bit of extra value out of Tarim on the following turn.
I wonder if he's going to Tarim this turn, because he actually got the value trade with the Drake. Play Tarim now, then you 4-2.
It's interesting.
And then there's Divine Shield Wicker Flame, which is going to be awkward. And then Tarim actually soaks 2 3/3s plus something, right? In terms of attacks. I don't mind this turn.
My only fear with this is what's your plan with the Jades that are coming up now? You know, in my mind, I wanted that Tarim to deal with 1 or 2 more Jade cards and try and get myself there. Of course, you're never going to exhaust your opponent of Jades because they're now at this point where the engine is infinite. They have no cards left. They're just shuffling Jade idols over and over again. But it's an extra turn or 2 that it provides you, which means that's an extra turn or 2 for you to draw the second equality. It's an extra turn or 2 for you to draw Tyrion, and maybe with the 15 damage from Tyrion start to set up a lethal push for yourself. But Game King, on the flip side, Austria's line here is that they're just trying to generate the maximum board presence they can now, and this kind of flips everything that I said on its head. The thinking behind this is that you're just trying to aggressively end the game as quickly as you can and limit your opponent's turns in that manner.
Yeah, and we are going to see the Jades come down now 10-10 and then 9-9, along with Aya. They'll be dropping out in 11-11 when she dies. It's quite the scary number on the board here for Game King and Team Austria. They have to do something very quickly to get a reasonable amount of health back from the Wicker Flame there, and now finally a big dude. But the problem is Ragnaros just gets killed by one of the Jades on board.
Yes. It's an 8-mana 8/8, which might sound impressive, but then when we are in the world of 1-mana 10/10s, it's not going to get the job done.
It's going to heal though, so it means that along with these trades, that Austria is going to be able to survive at least 1 turn of hits to face at this point. So, you know, Ragnaros is going to do a good job, and it looks like New Zealand's approach is going to be to just clear the board and continue with this Jade cycle. It's awkward, though, because the way the draws eventually work out is that you're only ever drawing 1 Jade Idol a turn.
Yes.
Which is actually really slow, especially if your opponent can deal with, like, say, this wave of Jades, and suddenly, like, well, yeah, I play one dude. Yeah, it's 11-11 or 12-12. But there's one of them, not 4 to 5 minions on the board like there is on the Paladin side.
It goes back to the question of trying to get the Auctioneer to stick, right? When he could have tried to get the Auctioneer up to a 5/5, because when you're at this point of the game and you still have an Auctioneer available, that just changes all the rules. Then you can basically do anything that you want. But as you mentioned, New Zealand just a little bit slow on their progression right now. Still have a little bit of resiliency with that Feral Rage to gain some more armor here. And it looks like just going to trade through, push as much as they can, take care of the Light Lord. 5 damage to face here is going to set up lethal on board, but there are trades available. So it looks like there might just be 1 or 2 games left, 1 or 2 turns, sorry, left in this game just yet.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting here, though, is I believe there's still an equality in the deck.
Yes, I think so.
So that Drake is just going to, well, maybe not now because of Consecrate, but normally would have to be held back for equality. Maybe you do just hold it back. Oh, you can, right? He'll die.
Yes, that is the significant drawback.
Yeah, that is a bit of a drawback.
Unless you just want to consecrate this board, but even then, you like consecrate and forbidden healing, and there would still be 32 damage in play. So, yeah.
I'm almost out of cards.
Necessity dictates the Drake must come down, but there is at least the consecration that's been drawn to pair with the equality if it does come out. But Flame Lord can still just keep on trucking. No major decision points here. He's made all of his major decisions this game. And he's just going to choose to, now that he has the mana available, just speed up his Jade development a little bit more. He can put 3 in, take 3 out, and now he still has resources to shuffle back in. Yes, guys, we know you don't like Jade Druid. It annoys you.
This is the point where New Zealand actually just play the 3 Jade Idols as minions and then go, oh, no. And then plays the 4th as a minion.
I mean...
And then Equality Cunt comes down.
Yeah, exactly. Even then, if they play all 3 of these Jade Idols as minions, and it gets Equality consecrated, they still draw a 15-15 next turn and can play it alongside Burgly Bully to set up lethal yet again.
It's okay, Doomsayer. It's not going to be enough, though, and Flame Lord takes the game. Look at that excitement. There's taking your first game in Hearthstone Global Games. You can build Hunter to do very certain things, but it's what you want to decide to build it to do, right? We've seen Hunter with double deadly shots and Wasp as well to try and beat out Taunt Warriors. But, you know, this is a bit more fluid, as you can't really tech a deck too hard, as we've mentioned before, because you just might not come up against it.
Yeah, but I think I like Ting Tong already. Stranglethorn Tiger, the more I think about it, might just be my favorite card in Hearthstone. There's just something about it. It just gets people. And him choosing to play Tiger in that 5-drop slot is actually still a little surprising to me in the new meta, because there's so many strong options now. You know, you have Tundra Rhinos, which people are being played, which have got better because of the addition of more early drops. Crackling Razormaw as well can give you benefit from being able to charge your beasts. And the fact that Scavenging Hyena is being played because of all the 1-drops now means that Tundra Rhino has got more effective as well. And then on top of that, Bittertide Hydra is a card that can come into that 5-mana slot as well. So
Rock.
Nesting Rock as well, yeah, great point. Suddenly, that 5-mana slot that was always kind of just a weird turn for Hunter.
It was always awkward. Yeah.
Sometimes there's just a ton of different options, but New Zealand and Ting Tong have just gone, hey, you know what? We're just playing Tiger, and Raven, for the first time ever, you're going to hear these words. You are a genius. There is a flair in Ting Tong's Hunter deck.
So something, again, the New Zealand players are relatively, unknown in terms of the world Hearthstone scene, but Ting Tong is known for bringing, weird stuff, like I said at the start. He likes to do his own things with his decks quite a lot, and again, a player like him bringing flair doesn't surprise me too much, but again, he's hit the right matchup here. I mean, Zagantaig is playing the Freeze Mage list. By the looks of it, I'm pretty sure Nova, Glyphs. We saw Alex Straza earlier in the Mulligan.
Yeah.
Pretty sure this is Freeze Mage. No, cute cat.
And here, as I quickly move on from the most traumatic experience of my HGG casting experience so far, this is where the mind games of the format really came into play, because let's look at the options that were available for these two players. Zegan had Shaman and Mage up against Ting Ting's Hunter or Rogue. Both players select one. So Zegan is kind of stuck in this, Zygantaig, sorry, is stuck in this weird 50-50 spot where he wants to pick the Freeze Mage because it's one of the best counters to Quest Rogue.
Yeah.
So if Quest Rogue were to come out, he really wants to have that Freeze Mage queued up. But obviously, you'd be asking this question, well, why would you pick Freeze Mage when your opponent can possibly be playing Hunter? It's a bad matchup for you anyway.
Yeah.
And if they just have Flare in there, you're going to get blown out. But that's the spot that Austria were in, that they had to take this risk because their other deck, Shaman, if it's going to be one of those elemental Shamans, way too slow to compete with Quest Rogue. Quest Rogue is just going to blow it out.
And also as well, just the sheer power of Freeze Mage, right? We was talking earlier, a lot of pros are just saying Freeze Mage is the best deck at the moment, and that's something you can't really ignore either. You could say, I've got two choices, there are pros and cons to both, but Freeze Mage is just sick. So I'm probably just going to go for that one. So far I've not seen anything too crazy, apart from Cute Cat getting murdered by the Arcane Missiles. But yeah, Grandmother's going to be really nice as well to drop on a Freeze Mage board. The same rules kind of apply to Freeze Mage today as they did a few months ago. Any Death Rattles for the Hunter are going to be really good. The consistent damage from the hero power is fantastic. Kill commands combined with Flare probably going to finish up the game.
I enjoyed that little exchange. I think it sums up the fundamental difference between you and I, Raven. I was sat there thinking about all these 50-50s and ways they're going to line up and this difficult spot that you're stuck in, but you just have to pick the Freeze Mage. Raven's like, nah, Freeze Mage is just sick. Just pick that.
Yeah, it's a good deck.
Yeah.
But what's also pretty sick is when you have the ability to roll Huffer. I feel like Ting Tong is a guy after my own heart here. Playing Hunter, playing Flare, rolling Huffer. What more do you want in a guy?
Well, New Zealand don't want much more right now. This is pushing them out to a potential 2-0 lead very quickly. It's worth noting as well that this matchup can actually get there for the Freeze Mage in some situations these days because you have the extra minion presence now with the Arcanologist and the card whose name I always forget, the 2-3 deal damage when you have a secret guy. Medivh's Valet.
Valet, yeah.
Now you have those extra minions, you can actually fight for early board tempo a lot more effectively and not just get snowballed out of the game by Hunter. Zagantaig didn't have that. He had a handful of secrets and primordial glyphs, and on top of that, if he thought he had any real chance, there is just the Flare sat waiting to crush all of his hopes and dreams.
Yeah, and I like out of the options here, I actually just like plus attack. Your board might get frozen, so just take the attack, take the damage now.
I mean, when you have Flare in your hand, the game plan is very linear. It's get your opponent within 2 life, and then it does not matter whether your face is frozen, whether the board is frozen, whether they clear your board. You flare, you press your hero power, the game ends.
Yeah, and exactly. You just want to get that damage in, right?
Yep.
So just take the damage. The health doesn't matter if your board's frozen. The 1-1, okay, it's 1 damage, but it doesn't matter when the board's frozen. So he's going to go for the attack. I like it. The only thing as well that you half mentioned about the way the mage can win, sometimes Primordial Glyph just does silly things.
Yes.
And you can actually pull out options you don't normally have. even like a Flame Strike later on to just wipe the Hunter board and then, you know, finish the game from there. But all those options aren't available so far. Ice Barrier, Ice Block still available in hand for Austria, but is it going to be enough?
And you saw the exact situation we were just talking about, right down to the absolute last millimeter of the rope. Ting Tong was able to coin out that Firefly, but it could have gone all wrong, and I'm sure there was all that discussion about which adapt to pick. 4 different players were having their input on every different option. Then suddenly it's, oh no, we have another decision to make this turn. Do I coin the Firefly or not? And again, all 4 players want to have their input. It can really drag out these games to the extent of the rope, and you almost just saw New Zealand getting punished by it.
Yeah, just dropping the coin for nothing, especially in Hunter, where you know, eking out every single point of value is very, very important indeed. It would have been a potential nightmare. Frost Nova into Doomsayer is going to try and clear up this board. Deadly Shot is a 50-50 on... Oh. Okay, you can't squeeze it in.
I mean, let's just go. Come on, the game's over. Bow face, hero power face. I mean, how is he really going to stop all this happening?
Well, what's going to be interesting is if next turn Ice Block and Barrier get played, then Ting Tong will know it's Barrier.
Yes.
And won't want it procced, right?
Yes, correct.
So does he flare then? And then have to get round, because we can see the second Ice Block is available as well. So it's kind of one of those funky decisions. He could just keep pressing hero power until it gets to 2, then flare kill him, as you said, and never proc the Ice Barrier.
Yep.
Or he could flare it away. But with this decision, depending on how this goes, if you don't bother about the Doomsayer, then I think you just keep pressing hero power.
Well, let's look at it in real terms. If you bow face, hero power face, you put him to 9. If he then plays Barrier Block, that is 5 turns before your hero power just kills him without proccing the Barrier.
Sure.
Right? So if you flare away the Barrier and the block and just keep going, then that's bow connecting to face and hero power connecting to face again, which puts him down to 4 in that case. So then from that position, even if he has the second ice block, you are still killing him quicker than just waiting. So.
And also you'll know that out of what, the 5 cards, 3 of them were the secret. So is he ever going to kill you at that point across 2 turns? Probably not. So this game could be over very quickly now. There is option of, well, I imagine he's running kill command, for example.
Yes.
Like, why not? So there's still kill command that could just, you know, very abruptly finish this game. Ting Tong with the sick reads, picking the flare.
The sick reads. I predict people will play Freeze Mage in this tournament. Sick read.
And they'll play them second.
Okay.
And then pick Freeze Mage.
So is the second secret going to come down here, or is he going to go Loot Hoarder? Loot Hoarder here is smart. This might even just be a little nod to playing around Flare, but that's probably reading too much into it. Just drawing at this point, probably the correct play. This is one of those risky Freeze Mage kind of pushes where you say, okay, if he never attacks this secret and he just has kill command in his hand, I'm probably going to lose over the next 2 or 3 turns anyway. I need to make this barrier work from me, but more importantly, my hand is terrible, so I also need to draw this turn. So he's going to risk not developing the ice block this turn. And just for now, it's going to look like it's being worked in his favor, but Ting Tong has a very clear plan here, and that very clear plan is just whittle this last few points of health away and then flare off that secret without even ever having to learn whether or not it's Ice Barrier.
Yeah, and I really like the way he's set this up. The rat as well is going to help, because even if it's killed, it's 2 damage, right?
Yes.
So it needs to be killed twice, and then if it isn't, then that's 7 damage.
Right.
So it's just done. It's just bow, flare, bow, hero power attack. So we'll see what the option is now. Frost Nova can come down from Austria.
There's the second secret, and there is a Blood Mage Thanos pinging off. That leaves 8 damage in play. Those 2 secrets will do literally nothing against the mighty power of Flare.
Let's see if we can watch the moment where Zagentag's heart breaks when he sees this flare. And there it is!
There it is!
Okay, you know, looks like Ting Tong is in a very happy, just saying, yeah, got him. Flare gets the job done. And with Hunter winning, New Zealand is going to go 2-0 up against Austria. This is, you know, I don't really want to call it a heavy upset, but just from Austria being so well known in terms of its player base.
To this situation where she is, you know, co-oping essentially with another player. So maybe if anyone's going to have some experience out of these 8 in terms of just, you know, hive-minding some plays together, it might be Pathra, but we were both right in our combined read. It's going to be the Taunt Warrior Mirror. And I'm just going to go out there and say it. I cannot stand this matchup. It's just rush yourself to Sulfuras. And if, New Zealand just gets a blowout draw of the perfect curve of a taunt every turn, and that's how they win the series, I'm sure Austria will be feeling a little bit hard done by the situation.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the matchup goes. We'll see what the lists are, because there are a few different styles of lists. It's not like there is just one cookie cutter style build that everyone uses. But yeah, a lot of the time, the way the deck works is you stall, get Sulfuras, get the Ragnar's hero power, and then the game ends, which is at least a benefit. Unlike
the game ends. That is the upside.
Look, unlike the old Control Warrior mirrors, where it was who can play the least cards, this is who can play the most to a certain extent, and then smash that hero power.
I like old Control Warrior mirrors. Feels bad.
Let's work out when I don't play cards.
Yeah.
I just armor up pass. So double quest opening from both these players as well. Patra plays a lot with, or practices a lot with Waning Moon, who's the who's from the Philippines.
Yes.
Was at a fireside the other day with Karaku as well. So she, like I said, she's actually living in the Philippines. She knows a lot of the Filipino players, and practices with those guys quite a lot.
Here's a potential decider, though. It looks already like Patra is playing the anti-freeze mage build that has come out of this deck recently. The armor smiths, then the shield slams to take advantage of some of that extra armor that you get as well. That means it's a little bit less proactive, a little bit less finely tuned in terms of just dropping your minions on curve and pushing up your taunt counter as fast as you can, which is pretty much what you want to be doing in this matchup. Armor smiths and some of the extra whirlwind effects are actually pretty big whiffs in the mirror. They're not huge cards.
Even the shield slam, a lot of the time you don't actually gain. I mean, there'll probably be shield block in the deck as well, but a lot of the time it's hard to gain enough armor to deal with enough of the big taunts. You look at Ali Armorsmith, for example, it's like 8 health. That's like very, very difficult to deal with.
7 is like 8 health, yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that was technically accurate. You said it's like 8 health. 7 is quite a lot like 8.
I know I went to 8.
Yeah.
I'm just picking numbers at this point. But yeah, the Armorsmith and now an Execute as well. Already we can start to see Patra actually just fall behind, basically.
No taunts to play. Austria picking up their first with the Tar Creeper. New Zealand and Patra not too much to do at this position unless she just wants to start chewing her way through a Tar Creeper with a Fiery War Axe, which does not feel great in any situation because the Tar cards, yes, they're big piles of stats when you're staring at them, but as soon as you pass the turn, their threat immediately evaporates. They are nothing once you pass the turn back to the other side, so using actual resources like Fiery War Axe to clear through a Tar Creeper is not a good feeling.
Yeah, the more I see people play against Tar Creeper, the more I see people just act as if it's not even there. They pretty much just ignore it until they've got a very easy, it either dies through just accidental AoE, or they have like just a minion that easily kills it and survives. They never really make any effort to actually kill it unless, it's literally like last resort here.
I do want to ask the question of Patra and of New Zealand here, of her choosing not to make this attack on the previous turn, because Austria coined a 3, which means most commonly they're going to have a second 3-drop follow-up. Making this attack last turn would have exposed New Zealand to Ravaging Ghoul, but it would have at least played around Acolyte of Pain, because she would have been able to trade off the Armorsmith again and take it off the board. Since they didn't do that, they're kind of forced into a low-value execute here just to deny the value coming out from Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah, definitely know what you want to do. And now there's the Stonehill with the Orny Direhorn, Faceless Shambler, and Ali Armorsmith correctly with 7 health. A lot of options.
It is like 8.
It is like 8. So Ali Armorsmith just guarantees a play next turn and guarantees a taunt. It's absolutely huge.
Is there any merit to the other picks? Life Coach doesn't have an option on 6 either, and that's often just a dead slot in the deck in general, whereas there are options for her to pick up a 5-mana play for the next turn, so I guess that's a small nod towards Ornery Direhorn, but yeah, I think it's Armorsmith time.
Yeah, Armorsmith just feels great to play whenever, and then if you can run 3 of those in your deck, pretty good to me. Dirty Rat does negate the quest, I believe.
It pulls a taunt without increasing their counter,
yes.
You make it sound like you just play Dirty Rat and their quest just explodes.
Sorry,
it
negates
disappears.
the quest counter for that card if it's a taunt.
Correct.
So,
yes.
Dirty Rat could get some work done. It doesn't feel great, especially after just using an execute to potentially pull out a big taunt, but it could just help slow down, slow down the progression here. You're not too bothered about the board at this point, but you just really don't want your opponent to get sulfurous super quick.
Yes, but this is this was the worry. As soon as I saw that this was the version that was teched against Freeze Mage, it is open to just a couple more of these draws where it just runs a little bit dry and doesn't get the resources it needs. And Austria here and Wife Coach so far ahead in terms of the count. They've played their first 2 taunts already, have 2 more in hand ready to go, curving 5 and 7. If they can pick up 1 more taunt, even just a Bloodhoof Brave to jam in the middle of these.
Well, the Curator's probably going to pick up the Direhorn hatchling.
I mean, 1 more to play in the middle of 5 and 6, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at worst, Curator's probably going to pick up the Direhorn hatchling, and then there's another one that can go down and add to the count.
Would you look at that? Looks like Austria have gone with the Armorsmith version as well. They have just found the right part of their deck in the right matchup. New Zealand with no such luck in this situation. Acolyte of Pain now. This has to be a draw turn for Pathra. She's just got no gas in her hand right now. It's just going to have to be Acolyte of Pain and Ravaging Ghoul looking for some options.
Yeah, there is a Shield Slam trade into the Ally Armorsmith if she really wants to, just to get it off the board, because then the Acolyte should just trade straight into the Stonehill, but it's probably just not enough.
If that Acolyte draws 1 card, this game is probably over. So just leaving it on the board exposed like that to Fiery War Axe, to Execute even would force it to only draw 1 card. There's just not enough going on in Pathra's hand. She needs to draw 2 cards off this Acolyte.
Oh, look.
Hey! So after playing the 5-drop on 5, we're going to have to depart from standard Taunt Warrior and play a 5-mana card on 6, potentially. But then we're right back on form with a 7-mana card on 7.
I think if Ally Armorsmith was a 6-mana card, it would still be a pretty reasonable card, in my opinion. I think it's very,
I
very
don't know
strong.
about that. 1 mana is a lot of mana, Raven.
Okay, we can make it 5.5.
All right, sweet.
Start introducing the decimal point.
What if we made it 5.5 mana, but it had 7.5 health? That's even more like 8.
That is, I'm okay with it.
All right, good.
I nearly said something then, but I won't. Realize we're broadcasting. Ally Armorsmith is going to be the natural follow-up, but suddenly, Fiery War Axe into Armorsmith if Wife Coach decides that it can be taken a little bit slower. But I find it very difficult to just not rush the quest.
So, I mean, jokes aside, the only real concern about just continuing to follow your curve here is that maybe you're starting to get a little bit too much value on the board to be countered by a Brawl. But when you're this far ahead on the quest counter, do you really care? And my answer to that question is probably no. And I think this is the correct decision from Wife Coach and Austria. Just continue developing. Curator, even though it overcommits to the board, you're going to refill yourself on options. You're going to have a Beast Taunt, a Dragon Taunt in your hand by the end of the turn.
Yeah, 2 Stonehill Defenders available for Patra now, which means that you can discover even more taunts, put up a bit of a wall. And something I've seen more and more common is that maybe it doesn't happen so much in the mirror, but is the warrior tries to get the quest done, then Dirty Rat Brawl, and then weapon up to kill whatever's left later, or hero power to kill whatever's left later, to then start steamrolling and try and get ahead there. Direhorn Hatchling, Stedagon, and Faceless Shambler available. Direhorn just feels good because it's just by far the most value here. Highest mana cost as well, which means it can't be played this turn. Stonehill Defender cannot be comboed with Dirty Rat either, but this is a lot of value and a pretty reasonably sized wall here. Oh, Cornered Sentry could be okay.
Does have the Whirlwind in hand, and it's a cheap taunt that she could have paired with another taunt that gets drawn on the following turn. So
as well Brawl.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. But interesting that she played the Stonehill Defender here, which I guess is fair. But then again, with the Stonehill God, maybe a cheap taunt was just a little bit more beneficial because her turn 8 looked likely to be Hatchling and Stone Defender. But now she doesn't have a cheap taunt to pair with that Hatchling, so she's probably just going to try and go ahead and slam the Drake and get value out of it. If not, go for some kind of Sleep with the Fishes removal turn instead. But as we have kept mentioning, so far behind are New Zealand on the quest counter right now that this is in danger of just snowballing far too far towards Wife Coach and Austria. Yeah,
we see the Curator pick up the Primordial Drake and the Direhorn Hatchling, so just all the options in the world, and a Brawl, 2 Executes as well. So it feels like Austria just has total dominance at the moment over anything that could not so much they have dominance on the board now, also over anything that even happens during the rest of the game with double execute, a whirlwind if needed to proc the executes, weapon, brawl, and more taunts, and you can shake a stick at.
So hit Sleep with the Fishes is a board clear here, just with the Sleep with the Fishes and the minions that you have in play. After the attack, there will be 3, 2, 4, and 6 left on the board, which will kill the left-hand side 2 minions and allow the 2 minions that you have existing to trade to take off the remaining health nicely. You can then start developing taunts of yourself. So you have got yourself ahead on the board with this play, but this is only your 3rd taunt as New Zealand, I believe, up against Wife Coach and Austria, who already have 5 played. So still a long way behind in terms of progressing through the quest.
Yeah, the benefit here is as well the 2 hatchlings now mean that they're going to shuffle 6/9 taunts into the deck, and that is just more and more value. And most importantly, the 9 health is key against your opponent's hero power once that starts get rolling.
Yep, but here comes most likely taunt number 6 for Wife Coach, not having to think too hard about this one. It's a nice value Primordial Drake, taking care of 2 minions in play and perfectly competing with the remaining 3/4 just through the 4/8 body. And that is 6 out of 7 now for Austria.
This would be a pretty nice time to hit that Dirty Rat for Team New Zealand now. They hit the Dirty Rat, there is only 1 taunt in hand. There is the Armor Smith it could pull as well, but suddenly Dirty Rat into Whirlwind Execute could clear up pretty much anything. You could still fit the... Oh, you couldn't actually be sure, right? You could Dirty Rat Direhorn Trade Execute.
Dirty Rat, Direhorn, Trade, Execute. I mean, it's fair, but like, I think that is a pretty serious caster vision play, because look at how many cards are in your opponent's hand. You're really expecting them to only have 1 taunt minion in play?
Yeah, sure. I'm just thinking... The problem is that gets the most taunts played this turn as well.
I agree with that.
A big body, and if they brawl, then it's probably half benefiting you if there's at least 2 minions on the board anyway. If they brawl, there's some taunts they can't end up playing anyway. So we'll see what happens here.
Just gonna go Hatchling and armor up here. It looks like, so yeah, not playing the Dirty Rat, which I think makes sense. Obviously, we can see pulling out that 1 last taunt and perhaps preventing the quest from being activated this turn would have been hugely beneficial, but staring back over a hand of, what, 8 cards, I believe that was at the time, you're expecting there to be multiple taunt minions. So if you put another body in into play, you're actually doing the worst possible thing, which is allowing your opponent to tempo out even harder on the turn they activate the quest, and that just could be a huge blowout for you.
Yep. We're going to see the quest get finished up now for Austria. They won the race, so to speak, so Fioris going to the hand. 4 mana available now. So Fioris does clean up the 3/4 pretty easily, but also so does the Drake. So might not be a need to equip it right now, since you can't combine it with hero power this turn.
I feel like we just start executing some things this turn. Just getting control of the board and backing that up with Sulfuris Hero Power just feels incredibly powerful. You can execute the 3/4 and then trade through the 3/6, even with Fiery War Axe if you want to, using the mana efficiency. But it looks like Austria are just going to go ahead and load it up. There is a nicely available target for it in the 4 health anyway. And just get this online as soon as they can. So they have that mana invested, and now they have that immensely overpowered hero power for the coming turns.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one now, and this is where New Zealand are just, we were talking earlier, Austria got so far ahead in the taunt count and the quest count that if they got to it this early, it's very, very difficult for Pathway to try and fight back to a certain extent, even with, say, Dirty Rat Brawl, or, you know, the only realistic way, or even just trade execute, play another minion, would be still just 1 hero power just suddenly makes you fall behind if it hits a minion. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I mentioned I'm not a huge fan of this matchup, and you kind of have to ask the question of what could New Zealand have done in this position, right? There's maybe a couple of question marks over their early game sequencing with a couple of plays. Don't think it would have had a significant enough impact to really change the equation here. So Austria and Wife Coach just got that big old pile of taunts on curve. Stonehill Defender coming out early enough that she could really just pick the option to fill out her curve most optimally. Got to 7 before turn 10 even to get the job done, and she's just in a very dominant looking position right now.
Yeah, the Armorsmith's getting pulled out. The Dirty Rat does get played. Is this even a good enough brawl, or do you wait?
I think you have to wait.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, this is relative board parity. When you take the weapon out of the equation, which doesn't get caught in the brawl either, you're not even that far behind on the board. So the big issues here, the reasons why you're so far behind are Sulfuras and the hero power. And those are things that your brawl aren't interacting with. So you need...
Brawl a weapon off the board.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic in this spot. But unfortunately, no such luck for New Zealand. And Wife Coach just looking like this is going to get snowballed away in her favor. The entire left-hand side, though, of Austria's hand is not looking the most rosy in this situation. They'd like to have a lot more pressure right now than they do, but the Primordial Drake pickup means that they do have some gas for another couple of turns now at least.
Yeah, the hero power picking up the Dirty Rat there. Going to make the trades pretty easy for Wife Coach and Team Austria. And this just almost is just going to snowball itself at this point.
Yep.
New Zealand and this Control Warrior deck in general doesn't normally have the ability to spam a lot of minions onto the board, which means that you're going to see 1 to 2 maximum. The hero power normally, Dying Sect normally actually clearing off one of the minions if you play more than one anyway. So this is just going to snowball out of control. I think this is almost too much to ask from Team New Zealand to try and even come back into this game.
Yeah, it's going to need a very, very fast turnaround. It's going to need some stability to give them enough time to complete their quest finally. And then it's going to need huge swings with the brawls. They're going to need very, very fortunate Ragnaros hero power targets. They're just going to need everything to go their way from this position if they can get there. But, for now, they just have to find the way to stretch out what resources they can for as long as they can and not get blown out of the game. But the issue... Again, one of the many, many issues of being the second player to Sulfuras in this matchup is that you Sulfuras under threat of death a lot of the time because your opponent has got so far ahead of you that losing access to your armor up hero power is actually scary for you in the situation that you're put in.
Yeah, and it turns just going to be the brawl into the Ali Armor Smith, still 1 taunt away from procking the quest, but quite right, like you said, when you proc the quest when you're already under pressure, it's hard because you throw away the armor, and you a lot of the time when you proc the quest, you can't actually use it as well as equip Sulfuras and use it. Like we saw from Austria earlier, you can't quite squeeze it all in one turn. So.
And look at the difference in situation. We talked about this exact play on the other side. They were staring at 8 cards, and I made the point of, okay, you have to assume there's a couple of taunt minions in that hand, so you can't disrupt that final quest activation. Austria had the exact opposite situation. They had a dry hand on the other side. Just a bunch of cards that they know have not been played in the early game, probably situational removals, and then 1 or 2 cards that have been drawn recently that could be those big taunt minions, and this was a great time for Dirty Rat from Austria. They got rewarded for it. That taunt minion does not count towards the counter, which means New Zealand now need a top deck to even finish their quest next turn.
Yeah, and if they don't, although we were saying it's a difficult position to finish your quest this late in the game versus an opponent who already has, well, if you don't ever finish it, you definitely lose at this point. Dirty Rat is going to be drawn, so New Zealand have their final taunt. Combined with an execute as well on the Drake. Not too terrible. The taunt being exactly Dirty Rat means it's so cheap that you can do stuff with it this turn. You can equip Sulfuras, you can press that hero power. There's just another Armor Smith. Dirty Rat's key job here for New Zealand is pulling out those Armor Smiths. But yeah, you can equip Sulfuras, use the hero power, you can execute as well. I feel like, that went as well as it could go for Team New Zealand here. They are still in with a chance, however small.
Very true, yeah, and I want to point out that Austria have actually played these Armor Smiths as well. Played these Armor Smiths well as well, and when I say played them well, I mean not played them at all, because twice they have been rewarded for just keeping those Armor Smiths in hand. There were numerous opportunities where they floated mana and could have played an Armor Smith. They just chose to hold on to them and say, you know what, if you're going to Dirty Rat, you're going to Dirty Rat in a position where you're going to try and either deny my taunt counter, or you're going to try and pull out another high-value minion so you can sleep with the fishes or brawl or something along those lines. So I'm just going to keep these Armor Smiths. And if you pull out my Armor Smith and then brawl, we all know that Armor Smith wins brawls anyway, so that's just fine.
One way or the other. Yeah, another taunt drawn for Austria. Not that they particularly need them, but they are good to battle for the board now. Suddenly, Fireworks doesn't do too much to these big guys on the board, but with Execute, I just wouldn't mind seeing these Executes get thrown out now.
Yeah.
Just use them. Execute the Drake. Hero power potentially, you know, hitting the rat. Suddenly you can still develop the Bloodhoof as well. You can re-equip a weapon for next turn. Everything seems good to me.
Yeah, now that Sulfuras has been played by New Zealand, it's time for Austria to just start murdering them. Now, if you can use your resources to force this 8 damage to push to face, that is a very, very real and valuable resource to you, just to being able to get the clock on your opponent. You are ahead by a long way right now, so it's time to just twist the knife and end this game before your opponent can possibly climb back into it.
Yeah, and nothing else even looks that great, does it? You know, like, Primordial Drake doesn't really do anything to the board anyway. Start with the hero power, yeah.
Hit him in the face anyway.
Yeah,
Seems fine.
If it just hits face, sure.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea was there is if it kills the Drake, then you don't need to use the Execute. And now suddenly the weapon into another Fire War Axe means that Austria can kill the Dirty Rat over 2 swings and no Bloodhoof. Do you think that was intentional?
I wonder. They're probably relatively comfortable with taking 8 to face right now, but it's not even just 8. I mean, there's the rat on board for 10, there's the weapon for 14. That's almost half their life total gone in one fell swoop right there. So,
and it gives New Zealand the option to develop a minion as well, as we can see. Convenient that they drew Bloodhoof Brave, but suddenly now their hero power isn't going to be as good again because now there's 2 minions on board, not 1.
6/9 has been drawn. The token seems weird to call a 5-mana 6/9 a token, but the token drop, incredibly overpowered taunt for its mana cost, and it looks like the Sulfuras hero power has decided on Wife Coach's behalf that this game is getting ended as quickly as possible.
Yeah, this is. But how much damage is this? 17 guaranteed to face.
Whirlwind Execute and push through is 17 damage indeed. Yes.
Wow. The problem with that now, though, is they can't do that and play Drake, but you can just play Drake instead of the Whirlwind.
But then you can't hero power.
Yeah. But I think you need to play the additional minion, right? You will just die if they hits you in the face again.
You die, or you die straight up to second Execute if you don't play the second minion. So, yeah.
Tough one.
It might be the situation where, you know, you're so far behind here, you need to just find a weird win condition, and that weird win condition might just be they don't have a way to deal with this enraged Bloodhoof Brave. The hero power hits the Bloodhoof Brave 50% of the time. In that world, I'm actually in a very good position if that happens, but it looks like Pathra is going to decide to go with the slightly, quote, safer play of getting the second minion on board. And now Austria, do they have a clean answer here? Yes, they do. This is guaranteed lethal as well. He can just Primordial Drake, and no, actually it doesn't quite work. He won't have the mana available to hero power afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't, like, do it all, basically.
No, it's fine. Brawl, Whirlwind, Execute, even if the healthy minion lives, and then hero power kills. Sure. Yeah. I was looking at the hand like, I'm sure there is a guaranteed lethal here. Took me 2 tries to get it, but we got there.
One more try than normal, to be fair.
I know. Off form already today.
Yeah. Disappointed.
This works too. You don't even need the brawl. You can just face tank the 5.
3rd try.
I mean, my play was lethal 100% of the time.
Whatever.
I was living in a world where New Zealand pushed a lot more damage that turn, so you would actually potentially not be able to face tank the minion. I was trying to factor that in as well, which was just 1 level too far. The simpler play gets the job done. And Austria are going to
definitely a good place to try and break out. Johnny Stone versus Slayer Max. Austria versus New Zealand. Looks like Dragon Priest versus the Murloc Paladin. Very similar to what we saw earlier on.
It is, yeah. In the extent that it's just going to be a straight-up value battle, really. Neither of these decks have massive, aggressive, pushing win conditions, unless the Paladin can snowball an early Murloc board, which they don't do that consistently. There's not that many Murlocs for them to be able to push that all the time, unless the Priest is playing Divine Spirit Inner Fire, which you would be rare in a Dragon Priest list, more so in those kind of Lyra heavy cycle lists that we've been talking about. So if that's the case, and neither of these really have good ways to kill the opponent, it's just going to come down to card-for-card value, and both of these decks have incredible value engines. Netherspite Historian and cards of that like for the Dragon Priest, and then Hydrologist, Stonehill Defender, all the cards we've spoken about today already for Slayer Max and New Zealand.
Yeah, and that was like a 1-2-3 Murloc triple punch here with the Vilefin into Hydrologist, into Wall Leader, and now another Hydrologist you know, New Zealand's got to be feeling pretty good about this opening. Sometimes you can just overrun Priest.
Yeah, a couple of ways you could have played this curve. You could have gone coin 2 into 2. Leading with the 1 here gives you the important ability to beat cards like Radiant Elemental if there wasn't a Power Word Shield coming down, because you could coin the War Leader and immediately have 3 power active on board, which wouldn't be possible if you went coin Hydrologist. But the fact the Priest dream has become real, Radiant Elemental Power Word Shield on 2 into Talon Priest on 3. This is one of the biggest blowout early game curves that's possible for any deck in Hearthstone, let alone Priest, which is a deck that if it's ever struggled with anything, it's getting early board states.
Yeah. Well, that's when, especially old Dragon Priest used to win, right? The second they did hold that early board state,
Yes.
they pretty much just won the game a lot of the time. We do see the Hydrologist come down for New Zealand here, and, you know, again, a lot of good options, but it's a little bit different questions you have to ask yourself when you play against Priest.
It is.
Especially because this Radiant Elemental hasn't really given anything away. So you don't, if it was Dragon, you'd weigh up Repentance a lot of the time because all the minions are so big. They normally play Twilight Drake as well, which Repentance is very strong against. But you don't know that it's Dragon, so it's a little bit more difficult to work out exactly what the overall battle plan is here.
Slayer Max just kind of auto-queued the attack to face there. Now he's rolled back and just decided to think about the implications of attacking into the Radiant Elemental, but does go ahead and just plug it into face, and now Austria 0 mana Potion of Madness would be available, but alongside the Shadow Visions if he wanted to really make something gimmicky happen with the Radiant Elemental, but the power of just generating the stats on board here is just way too strong. Opens him up to a good True Silver target from the coin True Silver from New Zealand, but no massive concern. He's just protecting that Radiant Elemental, threatening to get so much long-term value out of it now.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. When you can get the Power Word Shield, the Talon Priest onto it, it's so awkward to actually kill unless you're a priest yourself maybe and can just Shadow Word Pain it.
Right.
They get so much value every single time a spell is cast. It's just getting like 1 mana additional value from it, and then also just chipping away at minions themselves. It can clean up all these Paladin tokens as well, and yeah, just got some really strong work done in general. Shadow Word Pain, a Powered Shield, or a Dragon Fire Potion. Imagine we're going to see Dragon Fire Potion get picked up here.
Oh,
Powered Shield is good for the free on the Elemental, but
0 mana plus 2 health, draw a card is a pretty promising looking card from my perspective, but Dragonfire Potion is potentially crucial in this matchup because even small boards can become incredibly oppressive now against Paladin, because essentially Quartermaster is back with a vengeance in the form of Sunkeeper Tarion that can really buff up those small tokens, and if those small tokens are Murlocs, then there's the potential of Gentle Megasaur to do exactly the same thing. So having access to some AoE is definitely a huge deal in this matchup.
yeah, definitely not a straightforward choice. Has gone for the instant value of Power Word Shield though. As you said, 0 mana, draw a card, plus 2 health.
Well, that worked well.
Good.
That
Straight
worked out
into Talon
pretty well.
Priest.
Yeah.
And now we find out he's playing 1 in a fire. 10-10 go.
I mean, you joke, but what have New Zealand actually seen at this point? They've seen Radiant Elemental, Power Word Shield, Shadow Visions, and 2 Cabal Talon Priests. They are well within their rights to be terrified of Inner Fire right now. They have no idea that this is Dragon Priest.
There's actually a chance to go Hydrologist into Noble Sacrifice to try and block the potential 10 attack. Maybe 12 attack probably as well. Doesn't get it. Did they go for the eye for an eye?
No.
That'd be 10 to face. Well, 10 to your face.
Got
so
him.
funny.
No.
Yeah, that'd be so good. Okay, so these options are not the best, actually. Second Repentance, not too amazing. Redemption doesn't bring back anything super worthwhile. Maybe the Wall Leader, but then that's never going to be played into. So these are awkward. I always like when my options have a Noble Sacrifice or a Getaway Kodo, because I think those two are just consistently good.
Okay. I can see that. Does take the eye for an eye in the end, though, just to have a little bit of variety. It can at least put them in some kind of situation where if there was a lethal threat on board from just one huge minion, then it could be threatened to end the game in both directions. But they're just going to go ahead and play it now. And like I said, this is just fear of Inner Fire, right? That's all this has to be.
I think as well, choosing 2 different secrets means that Austria now have to be like, okay, what are these 2 secrets? You know, what do we have to think about?
Yeah.
Do I even Inner Fire this turn? if that's because that's probably one of those is Noble Sacrifice. And bear in mind there is no Inner Fire available, but we're just talking from the sense of Slayer Max.
Correct.
And Team New Zealand about what they appear to think is there. Now they see the Draconid Operative, which means they've got much more insight into what the deck list is, and a shiny Tyrion Fordring.
I would
a
like
option.
one Tyrion, please.
But the Repentance getting some value. Hitting that Operative is normally fantastic, but hey, another 0 mana powered shield due to this Elemental is going to help that out a little bit now.
No real notable reaction from New Zealand, from Slayer Max that turn. When he saw the Operative come down, there was no real surprise in his eyes that the big dragon was coming out. So I do wonder exactly where they stood before that turn and what they are up against, because, as you said, maybe the Eye for an Eye was just the bamboozle play. They just wanted to have two different secrets in play to maybe force Johnny Stone to do something inefficient, because they did not look too surprised at all to see the dragons coming out.
Yeah. And also, I just love the noise the little Murlocs make when they're summoned. So good. Bookworm going to be a very clean kill on the War Leader now. And already Austria's gaining more and more knowledge about what this secret is. It is more than likely Eye for an Eye. I think that's the only one it can be that's left now. They've attacked, they've killed minions,
They've
played a
minions,
minion.
yeah. It's Eye.
So they know it's Eye for an Eye. Second equality means that Slayer Max can choose to clear this board if needed. And it's a tough choice, because on one hand, it's not too much of a threat in terms of damage. On the other hand, there's a Radiant Elemental still on the board that's immortal in terms of health, at least.
Yeah. On the other hand, if they were scared of Inner Fire before, if we didn't just make that up, if they weren't scared of Inner Fire, if they were scared of Inner Fire, they shouldn't be anymore. Now they've seen this many dragons come out, they know that they're up against probably just Dragon Priest, and it's just going to be a straight-up value battle. If it's a straight-up value battle, you want your Equality Conch to get as much value as you possibly can.
Yeah. New Zealand do have the ability to have 3 hands, since it's a team of 4. As we went on the other hand multiple times there. So just to let you know.
Or we could have done 8 if we really wanted to.
On the other hand. Gonna be
on Slayer Max's first hand, on his other hand, and then on Pathra's first hand.
Yeah, Avenging Wrath was the pick. Again, not too amazing picks there from the Ivory Knight at all. I don't think. Like Avenging Wrath, again, not really going to get too much value from, against Dragon Priest in general, but combined with that second equality, can get some more work done than normal.
They do already have the Primordial Drake, which is a second equality proc. It is still 3 turns away, not even including the turn 7 that's coming up for New Zealand. So maybe they're just considering that a little bit slow. But as you said, the great options just weren't really there off that Ivory Knight. And I feel a lot of people have been getting rid of Ivory Knight from these lists, and I feel that's kind of one of the byproducts, is that there's just a lot of Paladin spells now, and those options where you don't really get something too strong come up a little bit too often for my liking.
Yeah, well, the list I've been trying out has one Ivory Knight in, and when I first saw it, I was kind of like, why is that even in there? Like, I didn't really get it. There were some nice ones, like Dino Size, stuff like that, which are really nice.
Yeah.
But in general, I kind of agree that you can whiff a lot, and a 4/4 for 6 is not normally something you want to whiff on. Stonehill Defender, though, as we mentioned for Paladin, has some fantastic potential discovers here. Let's see what he gets. And Sunkeeper Tarim, Tyrion Fordring, Grimstreet Protector, 3 great cards. Even Grimstreet Protector is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But compared to Tyrion and Tarim, that's going to be some great options. Gone for the Tyrion.
You sound surprised by this, Raven.
I mean,
it's Tyrion.
Yes, Tyrion, probably the best class legendary in the game.
Very likely,
maybe even still,
sure.
After the new expansion. Apart from Quest legendaries, I guess.
Yeah.
But Tarim just completely blows out any deck that wants to have a board of big dudes, right? And Dragon Priest is kind of one of them. But I suppose Tyrion is just overall more powerful. There's nothing really too great to combo with when you're this behind on the board already for New Zealand. I think if they had a board, Tyrion could have been a good argument.
You have 2 equalities in your hand as well, so I don't think you're overly concerned about being able to deal with your opponent's stuff just for now. I think by the time you've chewed through these 2 equality clears, there's a good chance that you're just nailing your actual Tarim from your deck anyway, like you've just drawn it from that point. What their hand was missing is just some way to just get onto the board without using an equality consecration clear, and that's what Tyrion would potentially do best if Priest wasn't being Mr. Steal Your Girl and just playing Tyrion before you even get a chance to do so.
Yeah, this is kind of awkward, although Equality Avenging Wrath has the nice benefit of Avenging Wrath hitting separately per damage, which means that it can proc the shield and kill Tyrion together. And this is like what New Zealand is going for. There's a little point playing Tyrion into this board when you know their Tyrion wins that like, fight anyway because he's brought friends.
And Johnny Stone just, in response to that Avenging Wrath, just gave the little eyebrow raise. The little, all right, well played, sir. You can have that one. That was a good clear, but I'm just going to keep going from this point. 4-8 comes down, significant board presence, and it looks like Johnny Stone is saying, you know what, we're just going to push to set up lethal with this 15 damage from the Ashbringer.
Yeah, seems pretty reasonable to me. Is this... Oh, actually, I was going to say, was this the turn where you just flip the board with Equality in your own Drake? But it's actually 1 mana away, so can't do it this turn, so... Huh, kind of awkward. Maybe Tyrion is just good enough. If the attack goes in, then straight up Equality actually clears up the Drake unless it's healed.
Mm-hmm.
If the minion gets cleared up, then the weapon can help.
Sorry, just Consecrate, you mean, right? If the attack goes into Tyrion, then Consecrate would clear.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And then, you know, I think Tyrion feels pretty safe here. You can play Valve and Inquisitor behind that as well.
Mm-hmm.
If the Tyrion just gets cleared up and you take a load of damage, well, then you can just Equality Drake, develop the Drake, clear anything that's left on the board, and have the Ashbringer swing in as well. So I think this is probably reasonable. No Vilephin, I'm guessing, is there to play around the second Potion of Madness to proc the shield.
Very good point. Also, just potentially more Murlocs to play in 1 turn with the War Leader, more Murlocs to play in 1 turn if there's Megasaurs in the deck and they get drawn as well. So lots of implications just to holding on to it. I think this is a recurring theme of the current meta is actually just not playing your cards when you have the mana available to, which is to me just kind of a little bit refreshing. We see, you know, playing around Dirty Rat is a very big deal in the current meta, which means holding on to a lot of cards. And we see situations like this with, you know, Vilephin Inquisitors and the like, very, very common that you have to hold on to them for the right opportunity and not just jam them when your mana cost lines up nicely with the amount of mana that you have.
Yeah, we are going to see the swing turn, and now because the Priest was played onto the board as well, this is even more value for New Zealand here, and you know, this could be kind of awkward for Austria to clear up. There's not quite enough damage with 5 from the Ashbringer, 2 from the Drake. Means it's not going to clear up this Drake on the Slayer Max's side of the board. It's going to be Draconid Operative.
Rockpool Hunter, Spike Ridge Steed, and the Curator picked up here. Curator, solid card. It's going to draw a dragon. Spike Ridge Steed will be a huge push on the board if A, you could play it this turn, or if B, you had a significant enough board control that you thought you'd be able to play it next turn. But in this position, neither of those things is really the case.
No, Priest's not known for its ability to keep a lot of small dudes on the board. They either have the board or they really, really don't.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. Curator is the just safest pick with the hero power going on to top off Johnny Stone's health. And then just in time, Curator to match his opponents. But this could be a huge Murloc turn.
Yeah, 6 mana between the 2 Murlocs in hand, which means he can lead with hero power, refresh the hero power, and fit them both in, spend all 10 of his mana on Murlocs here if he wants to, but that is a little exposed to potential AoE from Austria, and I don't think Slayer Max have seen any AoE get used yet. Johnny Stone, of course, turned down the opportunity to take that Dragonfire Potion earlier by picking up a Power Word Shield, so probably on New Zealand's mind that they don't want to play too heavily into that AoE yet.
Yeah, the only thing I was wondering with that is if it was Dragonfire Potion, then the Drake doesn't get harmed anyway, which means it's still going to soak the Ashbringer and the Draconid Operative probably.
That's fair.
Be able to kill it off, so it's kind of a a backup plan, almost built into the turn. But just going to develop a 1/1 and the Vilephin now. And the next turn could be pretty huge with Megasaur, even with plus attack, with Wind Fury, combined with the War Leader. This could just be Slayer Max setting up for game here.
But I mean, how is Johnny Stone even just fighting back on the board right now? Curator puts a taunt in the way, but if that wasn't there, he'd have a serious issue just trying to deal with this board state. Primordial Drake can take care of the situation as well, but suddenly it was Austria a couple of turns ago who started swinging the Ashbringer at face, saying, I'm going to end this game. And within a couple of turns, it's flipped right on its head, and it's New Zealand now threatening lethal every turn.
It's the sheer power of the Primordial Drake and Equality. It's actually an insane combo.
Yeah,
like,
it is nuts.
A 4/8 taunt that just is deafening. A 4/8 taunt that clears the board almost no matter what's on there. I'll take it. It's going to be the Drake again on Johnny's side now. I think he almost felt he had to do that as well because he knew the Curator drew more Murlocs, or, well, an additional Murloc. So then, you know, once your opponent starts building that board, you've seen no Megasaurs, which you're just expecting at this point.
Well, more importantly, it drew a beast, right? So it drew, like, the Megasaur is almost certain to be in the hand.
Yeah, and you've only seen one War Leader as well, so that could have just, as we said, ended the game.
So Poisonous is lethal here. If he can adapt and get the 3 out of 10 poison to trade through the 4-8, he can push the 9 to face right now.
Also, yeah, even if he misses, he has the Aldor Peacekeepers back up to be able to get really nice trades anyway.
Can he? He can't get there just with Rockpool Hunters and stuff. Like, buff it to 2, buff it to 4 with the War Leader, buff it to 5 with the second Rockpool Hunter. That's not getting there, right? Nope. I think it's adapt time. Let's try and win the game this turn.
Especially just because you've got good backup plans, right? Like, the adapt isn't, oh, this either happens or I lose. It's like, this happens, I win, or it doesn't happen. Okay, now I Aldor, now I can even consecrate the 5-2 off the board. You know, a lot of options available. He's going to buff it once.
More importantly, get another Murloc in play that he's buffing as well. Does not get the Poisonous. +3 attack does do some work here, though, in terms of allowing him to push through. It means War Leader will now only get him to 7, though, and he's a mana off being able to develop the second Hunter as well to trade through. So he is just going to have to go for that Aldor value trade, as you mentioned.
He's going to go 5 to
set up the push, 5 to face, give Johnny Stone all the questions to answer. Curator is in hand alongside a couple of Shadow Word deaths, but is that Holy Nova good enough to get him out of this situation? So he can trade through. The Primordial Drake is down to the board. Holy Nova only really takes care of the 5-2 and heals for 2. He does have 1 Shadow Word Death to go alongside that. I don't think the Holy Nova does enough in this situation.
Well, I think it does, right? Because he can, instead of heal, he can Holy Nova, Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death, and just leave this up.
I think it does enough to maybe like keep him alive this turn, but does it do enough to really get him out of the position in the game?
You're asking that question, then no.
Yeah.
Especially when War Leader, Hero Power, Rockpool Hunter is just ready to go. Consecrate's available for, doesn't sound like a lot, but 2 burst damage from hand, which sometimes it can be all you need. We're going to see the pain, going to see the death. We're going to see another death as well. The death of the priest.
Oh. Very nicely done, Raven. The trade is going to go through, and it's going to be just Consecration to end the game. Smartly trading out the board fully to play around any Murloc buffs for lethal, but there is just going to be the Consecration to end the game, and I think, Raven, that one has to go down as an upset. New Zealand picking up the victory over